Well, Talking Church, I am so excited to be joined by Pastor Levi Lusko today. We are doing this via internet stream. I know usually people are with us, but he's an expert podcaster, and so we're excited to chat today. So, Pastor Levi, thanks so much for joining us. It's a privilege.
Bro, glad to be here. Glad to be with you.
We're fellow Northerners. We struggle in the winter together and have beautiful summers. So is your summer starting off well?
You know, I will say this about this summer so far. It has been as nice as I've ever seen one. Nice little, we're getting these like 4 or 5 day heat, and then it kind of gets cool. And so you stay grateful. I think today the high is 60, but by Sunday the high is 82. And you kind of get that where it's like, got 3, because when it's just too much heat, you can't sustain that, and you're going to end up getting fires, and August is going to be smoky, and you don't want all that. But I feel like you get like super sunburned, and you're like, yes. And then it's like, okay, great, relief. I can just kind of chill out for a couple days. So, man, this summer, 10 out of 10 is my Yelp review at the moment.
Are you a Yelp guy?
It's been for y'all?
Yeah,
Yelp.
It's been good. I don't know if you were a Yelp guy. I'm more of a Google review guy myself, but
I'm going to be completely honest with you. I don't really use either of them, and I never leave reviews. I feel very guilty about that.
Do you feel like it's like you don't want people to like take your word for it? Like you're like, I just don't want people thinking that just because I like it, they should like it, or is it just because you don't think about it?
No, I just am selfish. I want to read reviews. I just don't want to leave them. But I do pay to Wikipedia. Whenever they ask me, I pay because I figure that's different. I should be generous. I love Wikipedia. Once a year, you get that ad at the top of it. It's like, hey, we need you to do something. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to give to Wikipedia. And I always have to do it when I first see it. If I say I'll do it eventually, it's never going to happen. But I feel convicted about leaving reviews because I feel like I do appreciate when I get to see them. So I should be like on Amazon leaving reviews like that. I just don't.
Yeah.
Do you leave reviews? Is that a thing you do?
I'm not a huge review guy, but I would say that I more recently have tried to help out my wife, their family are small business owners. And, when somebody leaves a review on one of their stores, you just want to, I need to go in and help. So I've tried to, especially with small businesses, like I don't feel like the need to review like our local, like, I don't know, like Best Buy or something. But small businesses, restaurants, I don't know that I write a review, but I'll for sure give them a 5-star. So, but our summer's been awesome, and our air quality's been really bad with the wildfires. It's been like some of the worst.
Like the air quality coming from the East Coast, that stuff?
Coming from like British Columbia and stuff, and then or wherever the Canada wildfires are. I know there's a few of them, but
we had some early Alberta fires going that they got settled down. I think that was end of May. But this new wave of fires from Canada has not affected us yet.
Our air quality here is horrible, but it's either way, our summer's still beautiful. I mean, right now, today's beautiful. And right now, I'm not in our studio. I'm in an office. I was saying right before we started recording, we're literally moving.
It looks like a nice wall to me.
Literally, it is a wall, and that's it. We have like the nice wood background and everything. I built a table, did all these things, and then we're like having Pastor Levi on, and we're in a trailer in down by the river. So
you know what? It's kind of cool. It's like I don't need all that. It's about the conversation, not the set. It's a good look. It's like almost like stripped down. It's got that Asbury energy.
It's acoustic set. We're just changing it up. Well, let's get into it.
Is the summer is like the name of the game, hiking and fishing? I know you guys are the land of 10,000 lakes. Not that you're bragging, but it's true.
Well, no, and it's way more than that, actually. Not that we're bragging, but I think that's like a mile wide. The phrase is 10,000 lakes, but there's probably closer to 20,000. So we're proud of that.
Oh, my gosh.
But
you're kidding me. Well, we only have 3,000 in the state of Montana, so you guys are crushing us.
I think some states have one real lake. I want to say in one of the states out west that has like one actual real lake that's not man-made.
I want to know what state that is. What state has one lake?
I think it was one lake or one freshwater or something. But maybe
what lake
I'm
would that be?
making
Like Utah?
I think it might be Nevada, like Lake Tahoe's like the only real lake or something. I don't know. Maybe someone from Nevada just turn this podcast off because like you
oh
don't know
man,
anything.
they're going to say, "How dare you? Our state has 4 lakes. How dare you say we only have 1 lake?"
Right, Maryland is the only state in the U.S. with no natural lakes. There you go.
You know,
so
that
it's on the
figures.
East Coast.
What about Washington D.C.?
Yeah. How many
Does it
lakes
have
are
a lake?
there? I mean, they have the thing in front of the monument.
District
That's
of
surely
Columbia.
man-made.
What's the name of that lake in Maryland?
No, there's
Is
no
it
lakes.
so popular? Oh,
0
you said
lakes.
none. I thought you said 1.
I thought it was 1, but it's actually 0.
Yeah, that's not very many lakes. Imagine how discouraged you'd be if you had a boat. You're just like, there's nowhere.
What's
for
funny,
me in this
well,
state.
they have the Chesapeake Bay, though. I just was out with a pastor, and I was on it. He had a beautiful boat. We went out in the Chesapeake Bay, so it's like they're on the ocean, I guess.
Okay, yeah, you got a bay. I just like to go out in the bay with my boat. They're also, how about in the bay with my bay on my boat? Can you do that?
Now we're
You
getting
could
serious.
do river. There's rivers you can go boating on too, right?
Yeah.
Like big rivers.
Yeah.
This is what we're here for, right? This is the
I
conversation.
I
people
think
came
this is
for.
what the people want, but we
You
do.
called me an expert podcaster. I'm an expert at wasting people's time, Logan. You
You're
have
also-
to really think twice before you
You're
bring
also
me
an
on.
expert of like dark humor too, and like the stuff that you say even right before you're about to preach. Like my dad, when he's about to preach, he's like, "I don't want you to give me any bad news. I don't want you to talk anything else about me." And like we're having these conversations about crazy stuff. Like do you have just your mind can go to different places really quick?
You know, there's a medical term for it. I think it's twisted, is how they describe my mind, Logan. It is a twisted thing. Here's the weird thing. For me, it's like I either remember everything or nothing. So like someone said something to me yesterday, "Oh, where'd you learn that?" And I was like, "Oh, I was in a sauna in Charlotte, North Carolina, and this is what I was wearing." Like everything I could see about that moment. Or it's like, "I know I met you and spent 3 days with you. I can't remember your name. I am so sorry." Like it's like either or everything or nothing, but there's very seldom something in the middle.
Yeah, that's a gift, but also I'm sure it can drive your family crazy because it's like you just told me that or we just told you that. I feel like I remember everything long term, like what I learned. Like last night, I can't remember what I was saying, but some science thing that I learned in 6th grade, and my wife was like, "How did you remember that?" I'm like, "Oh, I remember. I learned it in 6th grade, but I lose my keys." And actually, yesterday, I have this wallet right here, and it has an AirTag on it, and I lost it. I left it at a pizza place, and if I wouldn't have had the AirTag, it fell behind the seat, like where the waiting area is, because I got like a to-go order, and it was tucked behind there. And so literally I'm walking through this pizza place with my phone trying to find my AirTag.
Make it ring.
And so, but I can remember stuff from 6th grade science, so I'm with you.
But not your keys in your wallet. But that's good that you can make it
I have
beep
an
now.
AirTag on my keys as well, because
That's good.
Because otherwise,
Do you have an AirTag on your kids?
well, I don't have any kids, so that
You don't have kids yet. That's
my
right.
brother just had a baby, and so maybe that's why I don't have kids yet, because if I might lose them. My mom says I would lose my head if it wasn't attached to me.
Honest to God, I AirTagged my kids.
Really? How?
I bought these cool necklaces on Etsy. Like Lennox's is Spider-Man, Daisy's is a Daisy, Clover's is Minnie Mouse. And then they look like just a necklace, but you can stick an AirTag in them. So whenever we travel in the airport, if we go to an amusement park or a big church conference or something, I can literally find them with the AirTags.
That's genius.
It's kind of great. I don't know if it's like I don't know. I hope it's not like giving them cancer or something, but
Yeah, depends on who you ask.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, so with church, this podcast is talking church, and as much as I suppose we could keep going because we can, would love to talk church a little bit, and obviously how things are going, and you talk about this every week, on your podcast and with different couples and different people. But one of the things I'd love to talk to you about today is sometimes your ministry is going well, but you have things that you need to work on in your own life. And I think the answer to that could be obvious. Yes, every time we all need to grow, but there's things you've gone through, big highs, but big lows personally. But sometimes those lows and highs coincide with your ministry journey and your life. Like, church is down, like COVID, right? During COVID, everyone, attendance is down, people aren't coming, everything's, the turmoil politically, all of that. and so we're down, but the church is down. But then there's other times where you do a conference or you're speaking at these events, or people are getting saved, Easter's happening, and it's amazing, and people are celebrating with you, and it's up and to the right. Everyone wants to pat you on the back, but you're still going through something. And so maybe we can talk about how you can lead in those moments, maybe not even when it's always low, but when you're doing better than maybe your church is, or when you're doing worse than your church is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's funny. I think sometimes there is a sense in which maybe the victories are somewhat more hollow than you thought they would be, when you're in a great season. I think I was real discouraged early on when, after an amazing run or section or stretch of growth or real great opportunity, that there would be a sense of almost discouragement that would set in simultaneously. And I know I'm not the only one. I think that that's pretty, across the board, that's a lot of times how it feels. And I think there's some aspect to it that, there's always the need to keep the success out of your identity, right? To not like, if you want to own the wins, you're going to also have to own the failures. So I think you have to have some sense of, hey, whatever God does, he does. Like Jesus taught his disciples, don't walk around bragging about the demons, listen to us. Like, just be happy you're going to heaven, so that neither the successes go to your head nor do the failures go to your heart, but that you just can say, I've done what God's called me to do, and that's that. And I think about something one of my mentors told me. He had the honor of helping Billy Graham in the last stretch of his real busy crusade ministry with co-writing on some of his sermons. He would listen to his sermon, look at the sermon notes Billy was preparing, and then maybe suggest illustrations, or even from Billy's own material, help him kind of navigate some of that. And the honor that was a huge honor, and I've had the chance to kind of pay that forward too with a few other people that, hey, would you allow me to kind of speak into the sermon process? They've allowed me to do that, and so I know that what an honor that is, and also how like humbling that can be. But they invited him to go to a number of the crusades too, and watch and see the sermon that he helped kind of work on get preached. And he said one night they said, hey, Billy invited you to come back to the hotel and have a meal. And how it works is, they would load Billy up in the car and they would drive him out with a police escort to get out of the area, because there was, so much pandemonium and parking and all this stuff. And they took, with this police escort back to the hotel, and it's kind of, rock star treatment, really, if you think about it. It's like, that's how Elvis got out of the stadium, That's where the phrase Elvis has left the building came from. They would announce that so people would just leave, because they would just sit there chanting for an encore. It's like, no, Elvis has left the building. You guys can go. But then he said when Billy came into the little dining room, they had a hotel suite with like the eating area in the bedroom. Billy came into the room where all the cheeseburgers were, and he was wearing, his full pajamas, but still had his dress shoes on with socks, and he just looked so silly. And he said, everyone was kind of trying to congratulate him, on, oh, what a great night. And he was just like, so like, God did a great thing, and so nonchalant about it, not kind of reveling in the victory, but very much just like happy that God led people to the Lord, excited about eating a cheeseburger, kind of on to the next thing a little bit, but self-deprecating about his outfit. And he said, that to me is just such a picture of what we need to do in ministry. We just do our best unto the Lord, not unto men, not for the likes, not for the algorithm boost on that clip going viral, that we just, hey, I prayed hard, I served hard, I worked hard, I organized hard, and now I'm going to have a cheeseburger and, get up and do it tomorrow. So I think to some degree, Logan, we have to watch out for both believing too much our press clippings, because they're going to have it right sometimes and wrong sometimes. And they cheered for Jesus and tried to crucify him the next week. So I think to some degree, we're not as good as those who think we're heroes say we are, and we're not as bad as those blog comments, kind of say we are too, right?
Right. Absolutely. Do you feel like over the years you've grown in that, or is there something that has always been a challenge for you? I mean, I feel like everyone, like I struggle receiving feedback that's directed specifically at me. Like if I don't know who it's coming from, I'm like, I agree 100%, but then I find out who wrote it and it just hurts. Have you felt
Sure.
any of that?
Well, I think I've learned more to know what's coming. The Bible says, don't be ignorant concerning Satan's devices, right? So we're supposed to pay attention to patterns. And I think pattern recognition is everything. And, we planted the church 16 and a half years ago. And so I've had 16 and a half Mother's Days, Father's Days, Christmases, Easters as the pastor of Fresh Life Church. And so I've kind of noticed, hey, this is what a Monday after a big win looks like. This is what kind of sets in. And I've learned to sort of prematurely rest, like preemptively rest, because I used to always just like go and rage on a run of series and messages and this and blah, and then I would try and rest on the back end. But I feel like my batteries would get so depleted that I wasn't able to properly get the benefit, because it took the first half for me to just stop feeling sorry for myself and my voice to stop hurting and my mind to stop spinning. So I'm kind of approaching things a little differently. My counselor has helped me to kind of see that there's rhythms to the year, rhythms to our lives. And I think if you don't rest, you get resentful. And I think that's one of the great dangers. And I don't think that the resentfulness is anyone's fault but your own. Because when I start getting resentful, and I might be resentful of my staff, they don't know, they don't realize, that's just like I'm feeling resentful. But that just is revelation that I haven't been getting those needs met where they need to get met. So now I'm looking for my staff or my wife or my kids or whoever to do what they can, and having those unrealistic expectations or unvocalized expectations. But I noticed that when I'm rested well, and when I'm resting going into stretches and out of stretches and having the margin I need to, that I'm a little better prepared to have an even mind when it comes to something like criticism, which you're mentioning, and I can kind of more have that sense of, A.W. Tozer said, criticism is either wrong or right, but either way you can learn something from it, and maybe stuff that I'm also paying attention better, not perfectly, but better to what stuff pings a register. So if something pings in me, inside of me, and I notice it's like a 5 or a 6 out of a scale of 1 to 10, but it normally would be a 2, that tells me more about me than what's going on. Right. Because that shouldn't irritate me at the level it is, which tells me, okay, hey man, maybe we need a little walk. Maybe you need to go and leave your phone behind and take a beat, And so I think some of those things have helped me spot. Otherwise, you end up burning your hand, but keep touching the stove. We want to learn and do better next time.
Yeah, absolutely. When you think about surrounding yourself with people in those moments of a 2 becomes a 10, right? I saw a meme yesterday, and they said your soulmate is the person that loves you even when you're hungry. And I think there's some truth to that. But even on a staff, on a team, how have you empowered other people to solve the problems that maybe irritate you? Again, as a lead pastor and as a church planter, as somebody, you've been there 16 years, you know there's things you like, things you don't like, but you also have a team, and you have people that are here doing this with you, that are committed to moving this vision forward. How have you known to differentiate in the moments that irritate you or frustrate you, when to say, this is my problem to solve, or this is a problem that I need to give to my executive pastor, or let the youth pastor figure it out, or I need to give this feedback immediately?
Yeah, that's good. I think the text in the moment is young man's foolishness, right? It's, hey, I love now. What I do now is I email and I click send later. So if I think of something or notice something or realize something didn't happen and I know we're not open for business, I'm going to click send later and have it show up. People get emails all the time. Well, that's weird. I got an email at 9:04 on a Monday. I might have sent that Thursday night at midnight. Apple will let you on your phone, if you just do a hard press on the send button, send later. And I think, I know that I can text and violate. And of course, there's exceptions. If something happens, it needs to be fixed right away. Great. But I think I try to remember to assume the best about our team. Assume the best about them. No one on our team's bad. No one on our team is evil. No one's got bad intent. So if a ball is dropped, if I assume positive intent, that is, I assume the grace on them that I would want for me, because I would say, oh man, I didn't mean anything by that. I had no idea that was going to come across that way. That's how I want everyone to interpret my mistakes and my lapses. So I want my team to get the same benefit of the doubt that I'm going to want when I blow it. And I think we're best served as leaders when we're modeling repentance. I had to write an email to one of our lead team members last week and say, hey, I want to apologize. I could tell that what I said in that moment hurt your feelings, or yeah, good, not got you hurt. Like, that's a bad apology, right? It's like, oh man, why'd you get hurt? No, he didn't get hurt. I hurt him. I could tell my comment changed his countenance, and so I want to apologize. And I think that hopefully every time we take those opportunities, we're ramming down into our culture the attributes we want. I could give a staff talk on, hey, own your failures. But when I own my failure, that's 20 times more loud. And I think that just changes the tone, So I'm not picturing any of my staff sitting around being lazy. They're not lazy. If they drop a ball, it's not because they want this ministry to fail. They want the same thing I want. That's why they're here serving. They're called here to see people reached. And if I believe that about them, and then also remember they have kids and they have marriages and they have lives, and I want them replenished. So yeah, just because I can text them on a day off doesn't mean I'm going to. And I think those are some of the things that I've learned along the way on that subject.
I think it's so important what you just said about knowing that they want to do the best job possible and knowing that they want to move this forward just as much or close to just as much as you do. Obviously, as the founder, as the leader, maybe it's not the exact same degree, but the reason they're in this role, the reason they're in that position is because they want to do well. I think if you were to ask anyone on any church staff in America or across the world, very few, again, maybe there's some exceptions, but almost everyone is going to say, no, sure. I want to do the best job possible. I want to do exactly what God has called me to do, and I want to make our church proud, right? But I think sometimes it's the problems that happen and maybe those teaching moments where you become resentful about a person, right? You become resentful towards behaviors that maybe you've allowed.
Yep. And I think you have to ask yourself the question too. I mean, Craig Groeschel always talks about it, and I think it's a good question. If he says, my church doesn't give, if he wants to say that, he'll instead say, how have I not led them to be generous? So I think as leaders, a good question to ask yourself is, have I done everything to lead my team in a way that this mistake shouldn't be taking place? Now, you might actually come back and go, hey, no, I've been clear about this, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. But if you start there, it's like when Psalm 139 says, God, search me and know me. Is there any hidden sin? Now, just because you asked it doesn't mean there is. I can say to God, is there hidden sin? And he could be like, no, there's not. You've been confessing sin as it's coming. You're at a good spot. Amazing. So if I see something, a dropped ball for our team, I should start with, have I led them in such a way where this would have been self-corrected? Have I been clear? Have I shaped? Have I given opportunity for this to become a value that should be in their heart? And you might go, you know what? I'm expecting this, but I have not really taken the time to develop that skill in this person to where they would see the world in this way. And so we got some work to do. But you might feel like, no, like there's been plenty of clarity around this. There's been plenty of emphasis on this. I've led the way and modeled this, and there's no possible way this. So then there are times when it's like, hey, we need to have a harder conversation. It seems like this was, really clear. This ball was dropped. And I think in those moments, don't try and sugarcoat it. Don't try and, butter them up and then knock them down. I think just be clear. Hey, I wanted to have a conversation, a learning moment. Notice this. And I know and believe you can and have it within you. Let's make this a teaching lesson. But just know this is going to be water under the bridge. It's not going to be like a thing I keep bringing out against you. I want you to learn from it. And it can be a really healing moment that can bring you together.
You mentioned, Craig and his example. Talk about your friendship with Craig. I mean, over the years, it seems that that's grown, and you have some similarities. You have some differences. Obviously, your bicep size is similar. Your discipline regimen is very similar. But aside from those things, yeah.
Sure, I fly planes around the country. Craig and I have so much in common. We're both Christians that are men and married and dads. I mean, Craig is a dad I've loved, and the closer I've gotten to Craig, the more I've respected him. The more I've seen his leadership in his home, his kindness to his children, his kindness to my children. He's an incredible tennis player, unbelievable serve, going by like lightning, honestly. But his discipline in the gym, his intentionality. I mean, this is a guy who counts the blueberries he puts on his oatmeal, and on a luxury day might have 11 blueberries. But on just most days, it's just 7. Okay, let's just all calm down. It's like Tim Tebow. You ask Tim Tebow about cheat days, and he says, I don't believe in them. And you go, you don't believe in them? Oh, wow. Okay, these are people that are highly successful, tightly wired people that God has put just a lot of focus and intentionality in their hearts. And so I have so much respect for Pastor Craig and Amy, and of course Life Church, his leadership podcast, his books, but he's a really kind person. And Proverbs says what makes a man great is kindness. So it's not like, largest church in America, big personality, that he's like some big ego. He's kind. He's focused. We're sitting in a restaurant. He's chatting up the waiter. He's noticing people. And that's
something
to me,
I've noticed about
the most impressive thing.
High quality, high capacity people, not just in the church world, but just outside in marketplace. And of course, the definition of high quality and high capacity is different for everyone. But I think that it's not an accident, right? There's very few people I meet, and maybe you can share more about this, but just people in life that are doing great stuff in worship or have great podcasts or whatever it is. It's not, when you spend time with them, you can tell it's not an accident, right?
I think so. And I think it comes out in the wash. You can suck it in for a minute, but I think if there's a big, unhealth in your soul, that's going to come out. If you have, if you're mean, if you're cruel, if you're petty, if you're, self-seeking, I mean, that it creates kind of a black hole around you. And I think people eventually are going to kind of realize that and not want to, be of one cord of that, because light attracts light, life attracts light. The old adage is birds of a feather flock together. And that's why you also have to watch out, like, who am I drawn to? Because sometimes we tend to gravitate towards unhealthy individuals because it makes us feel better about ourselves. But when you're at a healthy spot, you want to attract and be around people who are further ahead than you are in ways, because it stretches you. When I go, snowboarding with people who are tremendously better athletes than me, I improve. I love skiing with my kids, but that's not pushing me. I'm not getting better in the trees. I'm not getting more courageous when it comes to picking a line. But then I ride with a couple guys. I'm like, okay, these guys are unreal. I'm being pushed. And so I think, whether you're seeking out someone who's giving you permission to stay lethargic or someone who's pushing you on to believe God for greater things, right, that tells a lot about the state you're at in your heart. I think sometimes it's easy to look
at people that you want to spend time with, but it's harder to kick out the people in your life who shouldn't be there, right? It's like, well, they've been there for so long, or they helped me plant my church, or they helped me do this, which again, it's not like you want them to die, but if you had to go through moments where you've had to actually say, I'm not worried about the people that I'm spending time with or that I want to spend time with, I got to figure out the people and stop spending time with them.
Yeah, I think that's a fine line, right? Because I think there are times when you are going to need to distance yourself from people for whatever reason, not in a mean way or not because they're not serving you, but I think if you know that someone is dragging you down, I mean, the Bible's clear: bad company corrupts good morals. So I think it is going to influence you. Take the relationships you're closest to, what is it, the 5 closest friends, aggregate out their income, it's going to be your income. Aggregate out their drive for God, that's going to probably be your drive for God. So I do think you can't run with horses when you're living with donkeys, So I do think there comes time, and I think you can be clear, It's like, hey, I still want to be friends, still want to be available, but I can't right now. Here's what I'm seeing, and I think that gives them the opportunity if they do want to take a step up. And I think you also, life is short, and you have to pick out of a sense of calling and purpose the relationships you really are going to invest in, because you have to hear God from it too. You cannot be friends with everybody. They say you can't have even more than 100 friends or whatever it is. And so I think there's a lot of people in this world you're going to meet, and it doesn't mean you're going to be best friends and give the same level of access to everybody. And to the person listening who's going, that doesn't sound very Christ-like. Actually, it's like the height of Christ-like. Jesus didn't have the same level of access with everybody. He had 500 in the bigger crowd. He had 70 that he was that probably all was on a first name basis with. Then he had 12 that he did life with, and out of the 12, there was 3. So you know what? Talk about excluding. He excluded people all the time. Peter, James, John, come. And dude, if I'm Bartholomew, I'm like, well, what the heck? I'd love to see Jairus' daughter rise from the dead. They didn't get that. You know why? Because Jesus heard from God who he was supposed to spend time with. And maybe Judas, part of his snub that nursed that thing was, why don't I get invited to those things? You know what I mean? And I think when we have that happening in our hearts, it's always a check. Why didn't I get invited to that? Why didn't I? It's like, whoa, where's that coming from? Because think about it. Even if you did somehow get to make that happen, what you're going to bring out of a spirit that says, I should have been there, even if you did get on that stage, you're not going to have anything to give them. Because what of that toxic, I need to be validated spirit is going to now all of a sudden have Jesus to pour out on people? So if I ever feel that, which it's, by the way, human, we all do. C.S. Lewis said every one of us looks not at the circle we're in, but the circle we wish we were in, right? It's so natural for that. But those things are kind of telling. But we do have to choose your friends. You just can't pick your friends' noses, right? Say? That's what they say. Pick your nose, pick your friends, but don't pick your friend's nose.
That's a new one to me, but I
You've not heard that? You can pick your nose, you can pick your friends.
This is my first time hearing that.
But you can't pick your friend's nose. Maybe they didn't make it. Maybe that didn't make it to Minnesota.
Either way,
it's a Colorado thing.
I'll remember that.
Yeah, I mean, don't do it.
I think it was maybe
I don't want my wife picking my nose. I don't want anybody's fingering my nose.
I don't know. Before we wrap up, I do want to hear about what's new things that are exciting for you, that you're excited about. But before we do that, can you talk about your ideas? And you have cool book concepts that you've done. They're I would say they're not the normal titling. It's not like 10 steps to do this or whatever. You have cool ideas. I mean, you had Skull Church a while back. You had all these new things. Can you talk about how you've leaned into ideating and creating new things? I think there's a lot of pastors that are ready to do new things. They're wanting to try something. They're wanting to start a podcast. They're wanting to try something out, write a book, but maybe it just sounds like everybody else. And of course, the way you rise above it is by being you. But can you talk a little bit about how you come up with those ideas, and even maybe how your team tests them out? And just, it seems like the stuff coming out of Fresh Life has this creative, unique edge that you don't see everywhere. And obviously that's why people are leaning in.
Well, that's super kind. One thing I would say about creativity is that it's a tonnage game. I wrote down 6 ideas for sermon series that I never used for every one that I did. So I think you have to give yourself the permission to have bad ideas to get to the good ones. Very seldom is it the first take on something. I mean, not without exception. I Declare War. That was the only title we ever considered for that book. But there's usually Eyes of a Lion. We wrote 60 subtitles, that all could have gone on it. So I think you just have to keep circling the walls of Jericho, and I think a lot of people get discouraged in a brainstorm when it's like, we know there's no good ideas, but lots and lots and lots and lots of bad ideas and lots of bad drafts. And I think that's okay. And then I think just constantly being inspired by anything and everything, and taking good notes so that you can always source that inspiration later on. A lot of people, I'll remember that. No, you might not. Notepad next to the bedside. You're going to have great thoughts during, moments when you first wake up. I like to, someone said, never go to sleep without giving your subconscious mind a problem to work on. So what that might look like is 30 minutes before you go to bed, you review maybe the rough points of a talk or a verse. Put that into your subconscious to kind of be working on behind the scenes. And it's amazing how many times you'll wake up with some great ideas there. Showers, saunas. I love sitting in a hot sauna. I have waterproof paper and pencil,
Really?
and then a waterproof Bible in the sauna. Those are moments. You don't have your phone. You can kind of read. There's a water Bible. It's called the H2O Bible or waterproof Bible that you get on Amazon. And then they make these little notebooks that you can write on when wet. You could take them on a river rafting trip. And so you can always be, what do they say? Don't let your best idea go down the drain, right? So those are a couple of the things I would say on creativity. And then I love unexpected connections would be my last thing. You are thinking about a sermon series, and so you're tempting to, what's directly connected to that text? But the unexpected is what causes, I think, people to lean in. So, I didn't think about this applying to that, or, whatever. And I think the more you're paying attention to things that arrest your attention or provoke a response in your body or whatever in your mind that aren't necessarily connected, and then finding ways to kind of weave them together. To me, you're
teaching us a lot of new things, from H2O Bible to leadership lessons and all of the above. And I know you have millions more things you could teach us, and I'm sure many listen already to your podcast and lean into all you have. I know you've been with us at conference before, and I'm sure we'll have you back soon. But talk to us before we close. What's exciting? Yeah. What are things coming up? Are you working on things that maybe if people have been out of the loop, getting them back in the loop, or maybe some new things you can share with us?
Sure. Well, we have our big thing that we're all excited and praying about. We are putting on our second annual movement conference for junior high and high school students, both ours and then youth groups and family groups from around the country. We have the furthest we have a group registered from is South Africa, but we got youth groups literally coming from Boston and Massachusetts and just literally all over the country. We threw it out there last year. We had 20 states show up. This year we passed a month ago where we finished out last year. I was just talking to Louis Giglio and asking him, because they do the same thing in Florida, and that was kind of the heart. Louis does this big student conference every year in Florida for high schoolers and junior hires, and they sell out every year. Youth groups from around the country come, and they sell out without even advertising for it. And I think that's where we're headed. But right now we're building it. We're just getting that out there, and it takes some people go to Montana, get on a bus, and it's kind of foreign to people. But he was saying, there comes a critical mass, comes a flywheel where the whole region kind of just comes to life. And I'm feeling like that's what God has us doing in the Northwest, the Rocky Mountain area, because there are these giant youth conferences in Atlanta and Alabama, Florida, but who's fighting, for there to be that kind of spirit of unity amongst the youth in this area? And that's where I feel like God has us putting our focus. We got Brandon Lake coming, and Christine Kane and Torrin Wells and Andy Mineo, and then Louis, like I mentioned, is coming, and my wife and I will be hosting and leading, and so that's where we're putting most of our energy. Movement conference, and then I also have a book coming out in September called Marvel at the Moon, which is my second children's book, and I'm really excited about it because it's a resource for moms and dads, uncles and aunts, grandpas and grandmas to read to kids that points them to the wonder of creation,
That's awesome.
but also
and when's
to
the movement
scripture
conference
and all that.
Awesome.
Movement conference is August 3rd through the 6th, and for the first time ever this year, we're also letting groups, if they can't make it in person, buy a site license, and they can have a movement night in their youth group room and invite kids out to hear Brandon Lake and I'll preach that night or whatever. So that, and we kind of think this year people will buy those sites, try it, and then hopefully want to be in the arena with us next year. I think being in Montana
in the summer is the place to be. You know, we joke we don't host events in Minnesota in February because we're not sure people would come, even though there's plenty, you know, you could snowmobile out on the lakes, but right? Oh yeah, they do. They put their houses out there.
Right?
They drive.
People
don't know this. I was talking to somebody at a conference the other day. He'd never seen snow. He lives in America and never seen snow. And I said, no, like people drive their trucks out onto the ice. Like, you know, if it's a few inches thick, like I mean, a couple inches, you can walk on it. If sometimes it's like a foot, and people can drive their trucks and pull houses out there, and people are just shocked by that.
Those ice fishing houses you rent in Minnesota are insane. I drilled through 24 inches of ice this year. It's a cold plunge because you have to auger through the ice, these drills that drill around. But I augered through 24 inches to make a cold plunge hole for some.
No, my dad jokes that he doesn't ice
but what were you
fish
saying about your
because
dad?
he has a good marriage. So, you know, it's not. I would say that the rate of men to women ice fishing is probably, there's not equality there. I can tell you that. Not equality, but you just sit there and you put a fishing pole in the ice, and it's not my cup of tea, but I've done it a couple times, but there's guys that love it.
Well, some of those houses I've seen, I don't know why algorithms are a funny thing, but I've had a few times where the YouTube gods were serving up for me outlandish ice fishing houses in Minnesota, and some of them have big screen TVs and bathrooms, and like it's like that's nicer than my house, man.
If you're in the area, if anyone listening in the area, ice fishing in the winter, but for now we're in,
in February, come to Minnesota.
Or more. Who knows?
Land of 20,000 lakes.
The glaciers, man. We're the farthest state from the ocean, though, so.
I feel like we should loan a couple. Montana and Minnesota should chip in and get Maryland a lake. I feel like it. You know what? We've been so blessed. We can afford to lose a lake or two. Just Maryland, you can have it.
I can
just
think
take
of a few
it.
that we
put
can
it
get
on
out
a trailer. I mean, I feel
Maryland,
bad for them. It's
only been once. Well. On that note, maybe we need to go to Maryland. We'll go together. We'll bring the lake, and we'll bring the lake. They'll host a Brandon Lake site for Movement Conference there, and that's when we'll bring the lake there. So,
yep. We'll leave a nice Maryland review on Yelp.
Full circle.
And tell
Pastor
them how
Levi,
good they were.
Always a pleasure to chat with you. Till next time, until you're out here, I'm out there. Enjoy and be blessed and keep changing the world.